So you could be their hero. You could very quickly rise within an organization. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome to this week's edition of Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I feel like I've been living in the studio because with my book, Cyber Crisis, coming out in a little over a month, I've been doing a lot of promotions, a lot of podcasts, a lot of TV interviews. So I feel like I've been living in my studio, right? Or as my team likes to call it, my padded room where Dr. Cole goes when he gets a little crazy, right? So, but I knew I had an episode to do, and I'm like, I have 45 minutes between interviews right now, and I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? There's a lot of things I could do, but what I'm going to do is film this week's episode of Life of a CISO because you're important. I love spending time with you, and it is one of my most favorite times of the week where we get to talk about being a Chief Information Security Officer. So always like starting with a few questions. So the first one that I got in a few different ways, but probably the clearest way to articulate it is a seat in the boardroom too far a stretch? They go, Eric, right now, cybersecurity at our organization is buried under IT. It's viewed as a technical position. Is it realistic for me to actually believe that I'm going to be a CISO and sitting in the boardroom with the 5 or 6 other chief officers of the company? That just seems like way too far a stretch. And what it really comes down to is what time frame. If you're thinking it's going to happen in a month, yes, it's way too far a stretch. 6 months, maybe too far a stretch. But if you're taking 2 or 3 years down the road, probably not. Cybersecurity is becoming a very important position to organizations. I will tell you, I talk with a lot of executives and a lot of CEOs, and they tell me, Eric, one of our number one concerns is cybersecurity. And here's the most interesting part. I looked at a CEO and I said, you're in charge of an $11 billion organization. You have competitors, you have regulations, you have workforce issues. I mean, there's civil unrest in some of the countries you operate in. I mean, there's so many factors. Why in the world would cybersecurity be your number one concern? And they looked at me, and you know what their answer was? Because it's the one that I have the least understanding and the least control over. They said, Eric, I've been an executive for over 25 years. I understand competitors. I understand finance. I understand regulations. Those are things I have dealt with many, many times, and I understand it. I'm comfortable with it, and I have a playbook built for how to handle it. But this cybersecurity, I don't get any information from my team. I don't get any details from them. Whenever I ask for a cybersecurity briefing, I get a technical briefing of 30 slides that mean absolutely nothing to me. I have no idea whether we are or are not secure. And what terrifies me the most is I don't have a playbook. I don't know what to do. I've never dealt with a major cybersecurity breach in our organization. So executives, whether it's the CEO, the COO, the CFO, Chief Legal Counsel, they are scared. They want to understand cybersecurity at a business level. They need you. They're looking for a world-class CISO, right? I always, when I talk to them, I'm thinking of that song, I think it's from the 80s, looking for a hero, right? Anybody wants a hero, right? And you probably have heard the song and you don't realize it because my singing is just that amazing, right? But the point is, I feel like we should be singing, they're looking for a hero called a CISO, right? They're looking for that chief information security officer. They looking, they need it, they want it, but here's the problem. They don't know how to find it. They feel like they have created positions called CISOs, and it has turned into a technical engineer position. They feel like they've articulated as best as they could what they're looking for, and nobody is listening to them. So you could be their hero. You could very quickly rise within an organization. Now, I'm not saying this is normal. This was a company that in 2018 had 30 million in revenue. And today, because of the epidemic and the business they're in, they're at 800 million, and they're projected to be $1 billion company by the end of the year. In 2018, they had a security engineer that was working part-time in IT doing security. And today, they have a chief information security officer that's sitting at the table and attends every meeting with the CEO, CFO, and COO. So it can happen, and that happened in the last 4 months, by the way. That whole transition happened in a 4-month period. So it can happen very quickly, but you have to position yourself to be successful. And here's how you do it. Whether you're within the company or whether you're outside the company and looking to work for a company or consult or do a vCISO style business, the way you do it is understand the business. If it's a publicly traded company, start looking at all of the filings, all the FTC filings. Look at the revenue, look at the growth, look at the business they're in, look at their product lines. All of the financials for the company has to be disclosed if you're a publicly traded company. If it's not a publicly traded company and you're within the company, go and ask to talk to the CFO. Say, I would like to better understand the business. I would like to better know how we make money. I would like to better know our profit margins. And yes, when you first ask this, they might seem a little strange going, wait, aren't you the weird techie person? No. I'm a strategic thinker in cybersecurity. My job is strategically help the company use cybersecurity as a business enabler. And the only way to do that is to understand and integrate it into the business. If you were or are a world-class cybersecurity engineer, you're going to have to shift. You're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to go to that cliff and you're going to have to jump. Because I'll tell you, I can coach you. I can tell you what to do. But if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. And I have so many of these world-class security engineers because it's outside of their comfort zone going, Eric, I just don't feel comfortable having that conversation. I just don't feel comfortable talking about the business and the finances and the revenue and the profit and loss. With love in my heart, remember, I'm all about helping you and caring about you. Please don't get upset. If that's really how you think, then you should probably stay as a world-class security engineer because you're not willing to do what it takes to be a world-class CISO. Now, yes, because companies are so desperate and the position is so immature and ill-defined, you can actually become a CISO being a technical engineer, but you're not going to be a successful one. And you're going to get frustrated. The organization is going to get frustrated, and it's not going to work in the long haul. So you got to clearly decide if you want to be a chief information security officer, then you need to go in and start thinking strategically, acting strategically, and it's all about understanding the business and knowing how the business works and how the business operates. One of the other questions that come up is, Eric, how do we put an exact number on risk? I know we go in and talk about the briefing chart for the executives is quite simple. What is the risk? Likelihood of occurrence, cost if it occurs, and cost to fix it. That's all executives care about. But how do we actually come up with those numbers? How do we come up with those exact numbers? You don't. And the reason why I say you don't is exact is the problem. You're coming up with an estimate. Everything in business is an estimate. When somebody goes in and says, okay, we want to roll out a brand new data center, or we want to migrate everything to the cloud, and they say, oh, it'll be about 12 months and $30 million. Just want to take a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the show. I have this free webinar that I would love for you to check out if you want to become a world-class CISO. Is it ever exactly 12 months and $30 million and 0 cents? No, right? These are estimates, but they're good estimates, right? They're close, but that's the thing with cybersecurity. Stop trying to be perfect and get it close enough, and you'll get there. Now, this is where we can learn a lesson from the insurance industry. The insurance industry has mastered risk. That's all they do. What is an insurance policy? It's you coming to me saying, I would like you to insure me for $10 million. And if I die or pass away, then you will pay my family $10 million. That's a risk. So they have to figure out what is the likelihood, what are the chances, what are the probabilities. If insurance companies weren't able to figure out risk, they would go out of business, because if they pay more than they bring in, if I'm writing $10 million life insurance policies and I'm getting $10,000 a year for that, let's just do simple math. If I have five policies, I'm getting $10,000. That's $50,000 that I got from my clients. If I didn't calculate risk correctly and all five of those people passed away and I had to pay out $50 million, that business wouldn't last very long. Right? That's a very, very bad business model. So the fact that insurance companies are still around, they're recession-proof, and they're doing such a great job is a testament to just how well they calculate and validate risk. And the two big indicators that insurance companies use is historical data and comparative data. Next time you get a life insurance policy or an insurance policy on your car or your house or whatever it is, ask the insurance agent, how did you come up with that number? How in the world did you calculate that information? And I know with my agent, Nick, he's going to come to my house and he has two folders. One folder, he says, Eric, is all your medical history. He goes, this is all your medical history, any operations, any procedures, all your blood work, all your doctor, everything we could find. We're going to look historically and see what is your overall health. And then the second folder are men in their 50s who live in the East Coast United States. And we're going to look at what their general profile is. And we're going to take both of those, mush it together, and we're going to come up with a number that says, what is that risk factor and what do we need to charge as a premium in order to get our return? So what you want to start doing is looking at the historical data for your company. If you've been hit with ransomware 3 times and each time your company was down for 2.5 weeks and it cost your company $4 million, then you could probably say with an 80% accuracy, there's a good chance that's going to happen in the future. So you would tell your executives that we have a risk of our data not being available via ransomware. Now, that's one where I do violate my rule. Normally, when I brief executives, there's no technical knowledge, no technical details. I don't want to go in and start putting firewalls, IDSs, DLP. I want to be very business-centric. However, in my experience and opinion, ransomware is a business term. Ransomware is a term that I see in the Wall Street Journal. I see it in magazines, and I see business executives using it. So even though we view it as a technical term, it's a very well understood business term. So that's the only reason I'm using it as the risk of data loss due to ransomware. We have an 80% chance of that happening. If it does happen, we can lose $4 million, and I'm asking for $300K to remediate it. Notice, I didn't put the solutions, I didn't put the details in there. So I went in and I looked at historical data for our company and said, we have a probability of ransomware because it's happened 3 times over the last 5 years. To me, that's about an 80% chance. Now, if you want to say 70 or 90, I'm not going to argue with you. Remember, we're not worrying about rounding errors. Now, I think we could all agree that 3 out of 5 years is not 10% and it's not 100%. So pick a number in between there that works for you. It doesn't have to be exact. Or I could go in and I could look across the industry. I could look across other companies, other entities, what they're getting hit with ransomware. And this is where a lot of the industry analysts like Gartner, I think Gartner's latest number is an organization has a 77% chance of getting hit with ransomware over an 18-month period. So there's data out there that you can use and reference. And I find when you're building the trust, when you're a seasoned CISO, they believe you. They know you're going to do the research. They know you're going to verify and validate. They're not going to question you. Of a CFO that's been in a company for 15 years doesn't get questioned on their analytics. However, a CFO that's been there for 2 weeks does. So in the beginning, you do want to be a little conservative and you do want to potentially have referenced information. Eric, where'd you get that from? Well, the latest Verizon data breach report that actually is one of the industry standards, they said that the probability of an organization getting hit with ransomware was 82%. Gartner, which is one of the most well-respected industry firms, they said 77%. I looked at many other sources and they said 74%. Therefore, I went with a conservative number of 70%. Great. You verified and validated the information. That's a good thing to do in the beginning. And then you come up with what the cost is. And a great example of this is I was working with a client on the ransomware problem. And they said, Eric, we can't agree. They had 6 experts in the room and they were debating over what the loss of ransomware would be to the company. And one person said 6 million, one said 4 million, one said 5 million, one said 9 million, one said 3 million. They just couldn't agree. So I said, okay, multiple choice. Here's your 4 choices. Is it 50,000? Is it 500,000? Is it 5 million? Or is it 50 million? And every one of them said, oh, it's got to be 5 million. I said, great, that's the number. And then as soon as I said that, what do you think happened? They were all like, oh, no, Eric, it's really 5. I'm like, stop it. Whether it's 4 or 6 million, that's a rounding error. And I don't care. And your executives don't care. Don't waste valuable time on silliness. Now, if somebody said 50,000 and somebody said 5 million, that would concern me. I would pull the string and I would try to figure out where the disconnect is and I would get resolution. But if I give a multiple choice test and everyone picks the same answer, that's good enough for me and we're going to go with that. So don't overthink this. Now, the 2 biggest mistakes that organizations make is they don't go in and they look at the frequency in which something happens and the total cost of ownership. So an example, let's say that there's a probability that we get hit with ransomware once every 2 years. And when we get hit with ransomware every 2 years, it costs us $30 million. Now, it would be a mistake to go into the executives and say, this year, over the next 12 months, we have an 80% chance of getting hit with ransomware. And if it happens, it will cost us $30 million. No. Annualized rate of occurrence. If it's 30 million every 2 years, that means it's only 15 million in the first year. So you actually overinflated what the real impact is. So if you're saying that we need to spend $1 million a year to combat ransomware, that using the annual rate of occurrence, it's only going to cost us $15 million every year because it's $30 million every 2 years. So that's an important one because I've seen people go in with larger years, it gets more problematic. So if you go in and you have something that every 10 years happens and cost your company $10 million, and you go in and say, I want to spend $3 million a year on fixing a problem that has a $10 million loss. That actually might seem pretty good. $3 million to prevent $10 million. Here's the problem. If it's $10 million every 10 years and you want to spend $3 million a year, over 10 years, you want to spend $30 million to fix a $10 million risk. That's not good. That's not good business. So in that case, when you put in your annualized rate of occurrence, you would realize that it's really $1 million a year for 10 years. So now spending $3 million to fix a $1 million risk would not be a smart thing to do. So annualized rate of occurrence. Next one, and this is probably the bigger one, total cost of ownership. So ransomware. We determine it has an 80% chance of occurring, and it's going to cost our company $4 million. So we research a solution that has both an endpoint and a backup that can go in and prevent and protect and deal with ransomware to allow you to recover from clean backups. So you call up the vendor and you say, I would like a quote for this product in my organization. And they ask you a bunch of questions and they come back and say, okay, $400,000. So you say, great. So you go to the executives and say, we have a risk of ransomware that has an 80% chance of occurring. And if it occurs, it'll cost us $4 million and I want $400K to fix it. What's the problem? $400K is for FedEx, UPS, or the USPS to deliver those boxes on your loading dock. Once somebody starts picking it up, it's more than $400K. $400K was the cost of the hardware and the software. It did not include installation. It did not include training. It did not include upkeep. It did not include maintenance. It didn't include any, of those other factors. So now if you only put in the cost of the product, $400K, you're not going to be able to deliver. That $400K solution probably has a total cost of ownership of $600K. So you want to go to the vendor and say, okay, what is the cost of this product, not only to purchase it, but to install, train, update, and maintain for a 12-month period? And then that's the number you want to put in there. Because if you're not going in and taking annualized rate of occurrence into calculating the cost of the risk, and you're not taking total cost of ownership into fixing it, your numbers are going to be off significantly, and you're not going to be able to deliver on that solution. So as I wrap up this week's episode of Life of a CISO, I just want to share with you, because a lot of people have been asking me, Eric, what is this CISO cert that I keep hearing about? Well, we've launched it and we've had a lot of success. There's a lot of interest. We're getting a lot of feedback. I have to actually add some great testimonials on this. One of my favorite ones is, Eric, I've spent 10 years and $300,000 trying to become a CISO. And in 6 months, you taught me more than all the money and all the years. And I just landed a CISO job making $450K a year. Now, I'm not saying that that's normal and we don't guarantee that, because you have to put in the work. But the point is, this is a cert that is aligned with being a CISO. It's 40 hours of knowledge transfer. It's coaching with me once a month, group coaching. And then it's a private peer group where you can interact with others. And if you're interested, just go to secure-anchor.com CISO, sign up for a consultation, and we can get you up and running in the next, we constantly run it. So I do coaching every month, and whenever you join the program, boom, you jump into the next coaching and you get in the next 6 months included. So if it's something where you want to be a CISO, you need to have more skills to become a CISO, or you're currently a CISO and you're getting frustrated because you don't think you have the right skill set, definitely jump on a call with us. Let us see if we can help you out. If it's a match, we'll tell you. If it's not a match, we'll tell you. So we're not here to push something on you that doesn't make sense, but if you want to become a world-class CISO, we put together a world-class program that will help you achieve those desires. And also, Cyber Crisis is coming out early June. It's actually being printed, and we are selling it really, really well. So if you want to make sure you get your copy, make sure you go to cybercrisisbook.com and then pick whichever link you want and order your book today, because there's a very high probability that when the book actually ships in June, that the initial amount of books they printed will be sold out, and it could take 3 or 4 months to get that copy. And trust me, if you work in business, if you have executives that don't understand cybersecurity, if you work with managers or directors and you get frustrated because they just don't have the mindset of thinking at security and integrating into the business, Cyber Crisis is the book for you. I've had over 10 CEOs from utility companies to nuclear power plants to oil and gas to hospitals to finance to retail organizations to hospitals all read this and go, Eric, this is the book we needed. I read the book and I want more copies because I gave it to all of my other executives. So if you want to make a difference in your organization, give a gift of Keep Giving, which is a book, and make sure you order your copy of Cyber Crisis today. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO. Any questions or comments, please post them below. We do monitor all of that. And if there's topics you would like us to cover in the next episode, please let us know. And thank you so much for joining me on my mission to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family.